Hi, I'm Chelsea.
And I'm Sophie, and we are here to help guide you to the why behind your wellness why.
Come join us on our journey.
All right, ladies and gents, Morgan is joining us today. You may know her from Instagram as Undone, along with her self-care society. Thank you for joining us today. And we're just going to get into it. We want Morgan to tell us everything about herself and her wellness journey, starting off with introduce yourself more if you'd like to, and how did you get into wellness?
Well, thank you so much, Sophie and Chelsea, for having me. For everyone that doesn't know, Sophie has been a friend and trainer of mine for years. She was my mobility trainer, and I am long overdue for a session, but it's so fun to have this friendship formed and then be able to connect in this way and also get to know Chelsea and kind of share some of my story, which will hopefully provide some helpful tips for all of the listeners. My wellness journey really got started at a young age, just based on kind of how I was raised. So I grew up as a dancer, and my mom was very into like holistic wellness and started working at a chiropractor's office that he's like super into like a combination of kind of holistic health. And then my dad is also a doctor. So I just kind of always grew up in like the wellness realm and really enjoyed it and enjoyed learning. And once I got into high school, I really wanted to work on like my fitness journey, and just really get more into working out. I actually would go to the gym with my mom growing up when I was in like kindergarten. I was like PM in kindergarten. I'd go with her in the morning. They would have me like jump rope or like sit on the Bosu ball, and like they would like bribe me with like quarters if I like jumped rope a certain number of times. So I think I just always loved like a really stimulating, active, energized environment, especially just being an extrovert, which at a young age I 100% also was. So I really just has always loved the environment. And then getting into high school and especially in college when I really was learning to develop my own routine, fitness was really the first form of wellness that just stuck out to me as something that I wanted to do and that I acknowledged immediately really helped me feel good. It was also in college a way that a lot of my friends and I like connected. Like we would go to the gym together and it was kind of like a bonding experience. And I think that allowed me to just make it a little bit more fun and try things that became a little bit more fun in the fitness space. But it's definitely been, an up and down journey. It hasn't always been linear in terms of just like my relationship with my body and how I felt and any sort of, thoughts like that. And when I moved to Chicago back in 2015, I was really like readapting to a whole new environment, a whole new life. I had somewhat of a new boyfriend at that time and was just really like not, it was like almost like a whole, I wouldn't say like an identity crisis, but just like relearning how to establish what will feel good for me in this new space. And that is when I joined a program called Tone It Up, which is a fitness and nutrition program. And it's a community of women. And I just really loved once again, the ability to like do it with other people that encourage you and hype you up and kind of like this like cheer each other on environment in the virtual space. And I joined Tone It Up. I was able to meet also a lot of really amazing local women to get to know in Chicago at that time too. And that's really what got me started into truly like diving deep into my fitness, wellness, and self-care journey, because that's when I started my Instagram for the first time. So I really learned, it allowed me to, I created this separate Instagram and I got to see compared to, the feed that I had that was like, that I grew up with and everything, like I was able to kind of find social media in a new way. Like obviously loved having social media before, but being able to follow individuals that are experts in the space and learn from them and try new things and just feel inspired was really a new way of taking it on. And social media really, obviously there's negatives to it and downsides to it that I'm also very aware of and disconnect for that reason. But there's so much like information that's super accessible on Instagram too, that at the time I really grew fond of. And that's when I realized that I wanted to be a part of that and be a relatable voice in this space that often can feel like unattainable or unreachable in a lot of ways or unrealistic. And I, was a 20 something with not a lot of money, not a lot of time, trying to figure out my way and wanted to show what I was doing as someone that's not an expert, but is but has my own experience that hopefully would be able to help people. So Undone really came from that journey, sitting at my cubicle at a 9 to 5 in an advertising agency. And it was just this whole idea of for when life in your bun gets messy and allowing others to embrace their imperfections on their individual wellness journey while providing tips and experiences from my own, in the hopes that it helps inspire others just to deepen their self-love on their journey, whatever that looks like. And over the years, it really expanded more into self-care as I just learned how important self-care is to me and is to personal growth, and really helping to destigmatize this idea that it's like, ooh, self-care, like it sounds really like bougie and luxury and like unattainable. And it's just like this buzzword, but it can be a buzzword in a good way if you truly learn to take it as this is my journey of the self and what feels good for me, and me checking in with myself and giving myself what I need. And it doesn't matter what it looks like. It doesn't matter if how it compares to other people's. It's just me giving back to myself in the way that I give to others so that I can show up better for others, and knowing that it doesn't have to cost a lot of time or money to make an impact. And so I launched Self-Care Society, actually coming out of a breakup from that same relationship I kind of referenced, because that was the time in my life where I was once again readapting to a new way of life and living on my own for the first time in a city that when I first moved here, I didn't know anyone because I only knew him. And really allowing myself to try these different forms of self-care and these different modalities. And because I was spending so much time with myself, it's like you don't realize how much you truly talk to yourself in your head, and you can control those thoughts and those narratives, and what will help you bring up more of those positive thoughts and allow yourself to celebrate more and give yourself grace. And the days that you don't feel well, accept it and embrace it and release it and just feel through it and move through it and know that it's okay, and know who to lean on for support and to ask for help, and just really be grateful for those connections. And so I started just doing these practices. And around my birthday that same calendar year, I always reflect on my birthday, and I was just really grateful for the place that I had gotten after feeling, really lost and obviously just heartbroken in some ways, and just a lot of different emotions obviously that come out of a breakup, and just recognizing the growth of where I've gotten to and what I did to get there allowed me to feel inspired to create Undone Self-Care Society, to really just showcase all these different forms of self-care, make it accessible, break it down through these different categories and pillars to help others see how many different forms it comes in, and to bring community together at the same time to do that. So really bringing it all full circle. And then it's launched April of 2020, where we all really connected online virtually in a space when we felt extremely isolated. And it was obviously an extremely difficult time at that very beginning point. And we have since just formed, the community is the most incredible group of really, really open, vulnerable, strong community of women. And it's truly it's my favorite thing in the world. And with what started as the ebook, I've now launched hardcover journals and a version of it in a spiral journal. And also now it's on Mighty Networks, which is an app host platform. So there's an online community component, and there's events and workshops. And it's really just a way to, where you're able to get to know others as you get to know yourself, because I truly believe as you do these forms of self-care, you're learning about yourself and gaining awareness, which allows you to know what you need. And then that's you giving back to yourself and deepening your self-love at the same time. So that was a long-winded answer of basically how I started and got to where I am now. But obviously self-care, different phases of your life and different chapters of your life, what you need is different. And it's learning how to honor those needs along the way.
Thanks so much for sharing that. I feel like I'm sure Sophie can relate to a lot of that you were saying too. And you had mentioned, so a lot of what our podcast is, obviously with being Wellness Why, is the why behind why something is important to you. And so you had mentioned wellness being a part of your journey through your life. And like you said, things change. So tell us a little bit about how do you feel your why for wellness, or why wellness is important to you, how it's evolved and changed. And again, I'm sure there's probably a million examples of this, but how has it evolved over the years, or a little bit about what exactly is your why, or why is wellness and self-care so important to your daily routine and just overall health?
So I would say it's definitely evolved in the sense that when I first started, I feel like just the way pop culture maybe was at the time, especially, I used to just think wellness was like fitness and nutrition. And now I really see it as this whole mind, body, spirit connection, well being. And for me, a huge part of that is mental health. I'm a huge mental health advocate. I have now been in therapy for like almost a year and a half consistently. And that has become a huge part of my daily journey as well. So really just allowing wellness to embody more than what maybe I used to, and really soaking up and leaning into all of those forms of wellness in order to just feel like my best self, and really allowing myself to do those things that helps me feel that way.
I loved that you had mentioned looking at it in a full circle, because I know, again, like Sophie and I have talked a lot about that. And I think that's something a lot of people struggle with, is looking at health. Like if someone says like, I want to be healthier, a lot of people, you're exactly right. It's like they just think about working out or just think about eating healthier. And there's so much of a deeper connection. There's so much of a deeper something going on. And I know like Sophie works with her clients on a lot of that. I work with my clients on nutrition. I'm a dietitian, but like there's so many things that we talk about on in all of our conversations that have nothing to do with food. So it's really interesting that there's so much more, like with even just the example of wellness, like that's such a broad term. There's so much deeper connections and things going on. So that's great that you have a similar mindset with all of that.
Yeah, and I knew Sophie was that way, because I tell you, every session we've had is a therapy session too. We're both
Yes.
like, we're like releasing with like the mobility and saying everything at the same time, and it's like I leave like weights lifted. So no, I really I absolutely love that, and yeah, there's so much connected within the world of wellness, and I mean, and you two are making a huge difference and impact doing what you do.
Thank you. We're trying. And then with that, Morgan, just tell us a little bit about like what your daily wellness routine looks like. Does it change day to day, look mostly the same? Just kind of go into that a little bit.
So I'm definitely a creature of habit. I love my morning routine. I have my morning routine, but I'm also someone that's all about flow and not force. So I check in with myself every single day, and try to obviously listen and check in with my body too, as part of that, and really take what I need, or, take away what I don't need based on that. So most of my mornings and days really start with, like, I typically try to wake up around the same time, but honestly, if I'm tired, I let myself sleep in a little bit more. So that's kind of one of those ways of doing that. But I'll wake up, I'll ice roll, I'll journal, I'll make my bed, and kind of like just get everything organized for the day. And I love to have movement in the morning. But for example, if I have a day that I wake up and I don't feel great, or I feel really drained and exhausted, or my like body hurts because I'm really sore, or feel like I pulled a muscle or something, I will always prioritize that and how I feel as a way to guide my day. I'm definitely someone that loves structure, and I think that obviously having a routine and building a routine that feels good for you is really important, but it's also okay when that doesn't look the same every day. Like, you need to be able to be adaptable and flexible, because how you feel is most important. So the one biggest thing within my community and my program is always asking individuals to start each day by checking it with themselves and how they feel. And once you actually admit how you feel out loud, whether you're writing it down or saying it out loud, then you can kind of be like, okay, so I feel really anxious right now. What can I do to like pivot that a little bit, and maybe just release some of it in order to set the tone for the day? And then I can dive in after I've taken this time to just, do a quick 5-minute meditation before I start work, or whatever that may look like for you. So it's knowing where to add in or subtract things within that routine based on how you feel that day, to really honor your needs. And really knowing that I mean, one of the biggest things about self-care is that it doesn't have to take a lot of time. And so if you, in the morning, I mean, and that's why I'm such a big believer in journaling and doing it just for a few minutes, because that gives you that time to be honest with yourself. But whatever that self-care routine looks like for you, it can be those few minutes, as long as that allows you to really like then understand how you feel for the day, if that makes sense.
I think that's super important like checking in with yourself and knowing how you feel, because like some people don't even know how they feel. Like, I know that sounds so weird, but like I've been in cognitive behavioral therapy now for a little over a year. And I remember at the beginning, she would pull up this feelings wheel, and you can Google it if you want to. There's a feelings wheel, Google it.
I think I know what you're talking about. I can picture it.
And like every feeling, like if you're sad, it leads to other feelings, which lead to other feelings. And it's like literally naming and listing or saying out loud your feelings helps so much. And you literally feel better when you can figure out how you feel. Like,
exactly. I love that. And I love that that was introduced to you. And honestly, I always say that even if you just have a blank piece of paper, or if you're someone that prefers to say it out loud, like if there's one thing you could do for yourself in the morning before you grab your phone and check in with other people, or you check your email, because really when you're checking in online or logging into work, what you're doing is checking in with other people and worrying about other people and doing things for them. So if there's one thing you can do for yourself in the morning, and at night also before bed even, is to just check in with how you feel. And like that in itself is self-care and a part of your routine. Like the few things I mentioned that I love in my morning routine, I love to do disconnected beforehand, but it doesn't have to look like that every day. And I think that that's part of breaking the stigma of self-care too. Like your morning routine doesn't have to be like, the warm lemon water and like then 8-step routine that comes after it every single day. It's literally just, it sounds amazing, but it really can be just those like couple of things that for you feel the best and just take a few minutes. So I always try to just help kind of allow others to establish that by sharing it. And knowing, like I said, it doesn't have to look a certain way either. It's just checking in with what you need and doing it for just those couple of minutes.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Sophie, you and I talked about that. That kind of connects with our previous podcast when we talked about devices. So we had a podcast that talked about like, should you use, should you have an Apple Watch? Should you, be like tracking your calories? And I think that goes back to that like disconnect piece. Cause I gave the example of that I had a Fitbit a while ago, and the first thing that I would always do in the morning was like look up and see what my Fitbit was ranking me, how I slept. And I was realizing like, no matter how I felt or like my emotions when I woke up, I would always base it off of what the app was telling me. And so I actually got rid of my Fitbit because it came to a point where it was just like overtaking my life. But that's a great example of just like starting your morning disconnected, whether that be from an email, an app, a watch, like whatever it might be, just really being in tune with yourself, because it's a huge challenge in our world that we live in. Unfortunately, it is so much based on what's going on out there. And that has a lot to do with our phones, of course. So I love that you gave that tip.
Yeah, no, and I love that too. It's allowing yourself to set those boundaries if something isn't serving you. So I completely agree.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You kind of already mentioned some of these things, so it's okay if you go backwards a little bit, but like if you were to give someone a couple of tips, if someone was like, hey, I want to get started with adding in more self-care to my day. Is there anything else? I know you had mentioned like the morning routine and all of that, but are there any other like favorite tips or best tips for someone who might want to add some more self-care into their day-to-day routine?
So I think it really starts with just exploring different avenues and finding what works for you, and knowing you might gravitate more towards like a certain pillar or type of self-care than someone else. So I think I always encourage people to just have fun trying new things, and also to take the everyday tasks that might seem like a chore, like the cleaning the kitchen, the tidying up, the making the bed, the cooking dinner, and allow it to become self-care, and it kind of then embodies it, and then it feels better. So for example, cooking might feel like I have this whole thing of greens in my fridge that goes bad at the end of the week, and now I have to use it so it doesn't go bad. But it's like if you're like trying a new recipe, or just like you put on a podcast in your ears and then you're cooking, like I find that I love cooking as form of mindfulness, because mindfulness to me is anything that allows you to focus on what's in front of you and what's in your present. And you're not, when you're cooking, especially if you're focusing on a recipe, you're not thinking of everything else. Like it kind of, and it's like one of those things you might not realize in the moment, but it like shuts off that mind chatter a little bit. And obviously cooking's not for everyone, but like making playlists, dancing around your living room. Like I said, listening to podcasts, reading is a huge one. Like reading last year when I was going through my breakup, like really helped me actually get out of my own head a little bit. So I've always been a big advocate of like, especially, I mean, I'm like a fiction over nonfiction book person, but it's just like a fun little way to like shift your focus. So there's so many forms of self-care that you might not consider or define as self-care, but once you do, it really elevates the experience and allows you to enjoy how it feels good and like kind of enjoy those benefits more than you thought that you would. So I always kind of emphasize that. And then I can kind of go through what the like forms of self-care that I share are, because I think that it's helpful just to like categorize, because so many things within it, people don't think of self-care maybe initially. So mindfulness is the one which I just mentioned. Obviously that includes like meditation and journaling. I also love to include like spiritual fun things in there, like reading your horoscope, pulling cards, affirmation cards, going on a walk, things like that. Therapy can be a part of that, but I also like to include therapy in another week as well. Environment week is like one that I absolutely love, because I love like home things and like cozy things. So environment week is really any space that you live, work, and play in. And that includes your digital spaces too. And obviously working from home, as most people are, it's like extremely important to figure out how to like allow yourself to do all of those things in that space and like feel at home and at peace within it. So it's like lighting candles, organizing, decluttering, cleaning out your closet, donating things, anything kind of around the home in that way, getting cozy, making tea, but then also, and like filling your space with music. Then also that's when you like unsubscribe from emails, mute or block people or remove people on social media. That's when you really set those boundaries to disconnect in that way, because you're like realistically, we like in some capacity live in those places. And I think that there's, you know, always these quotes and stuff that I always really resonate with and want to share, that self-care sometimes is the hard things. It's not always these fancy, bougie, happy, glorified things. Sometimes it is the cutting out toxic relationships and like acknowledging these people and things that no longer serve you. And I think a lot of it does tie into social media. So that's a good week to really just like, it's your space, and to like reclaim control over it and just like let go of those things that don't serve you. And same goes for like when you're decluttering in your home, obviously. Third week is connection week, which is all about acknowledging and like acknowledging kind of the people in your life and spreading gratitude and checking in on them as you kind of check on yourself, and really just that like mutual connection, and really just admiring the people in your life that allow you to feel like your best self, and like that energy that like lifts you up and lights you up. And it's all about like attending events and meeting new people and like reaching out and telling someone that they inspire you. And it's just that like really that extra encouragement to just like reach out and check in on the people you love and like tell them you love them, and connect with family, FaceTime, friends, all of those things. And then the fourth week is release week, which is really like tied to what you two do, where it's movement and fitness and nutrition and just like a lot of like physical well-being, but it's also the recovery and also the emphasis of the emotional release that comes with it and allowing that to come up. So it's really like kind of what you were talking about, where it's not about the calorie burning and the tracking. It's more about allowing whatever comes up to come up and acknowledging it and releasing it, like emotions moving through you as you move, I like to say. And then the last week is self-love week, which is really like the culmination of everything, and the positive affirmations in the mirror, writing them on a post-it, saying them out loud. It's also like the fun little things like the baths and the face masks, which you can totally do at home too. But at that point, as you've explored all these different forms of self-care, you start to build the routine that works for you and add in what feels good for you. And it then forms like, it's like that whole 21 days to form a habit. And it's the same with self-care. It's just like, try things. If it doesn't work for you, if it doesn't make you feel great, leave it. Like, it doesn't matter what you see on Instagram and someone's like beautiful reel that they made. Like, that's what they're doing. If for you, what makes you feel the best is things that we won't like you, that you can't even physically show, like it's for you. And that's what's most important. So I always just kind of encourage people to do that and to just try, you know, obviously not putting stress on yourself to make everything happen because it's supposed to be accessible. It's supposed to only take a few minutes, and just acknowledging what for you is going to feel the best.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And I like how you mentioned that it looks different for everyone else, because it should. Like, we are not all the same. One of my favorite quotes: if we all worked out the same and ate the same, we would still look different. Like, everyone's daily routine, like everyone's job is different, all that stuff. Like, everyone's environment is different. So everyone's wellness routine is going to look different.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why it's called self-care too. And that's something that's important to acknowledge. But you never have to feel alone in doing it, because if you lean on others for support, or if you do it alongside a community, you will still feel that support as you explore your own like journey of the self.
Right? Surrounding yourself by a good environment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I liked how you mentioned all of that, because I think you had said a couple of times, but like there's a huge stigma around self-care, that it is all of like you did a great job at explaining that. So thank you for breaking that down, because I think that a lot of people will be able to resonate to that and connect with that and be able to understand, like, okay, maybe I can start with something that's going to help better my life in one of these areas, instead of feeling like I have to do everything. Because I liked how you mentioned like exploring different areas, because I think also, I know I struggle with this, and I know a lot of my friends and family and clients struggle with this too, is feeling like you have to do everything. Like, okay, but
Right.
I have to be doing this and this and this and this. And so being able to have the ability to explore that, but not feeling guilty in the way that you're not achieving everything. It's like breaking it down, and just it's not that you're not doing everything, it's just you're exploring different paths to find what works for you.
And then I liked how you also mentioned that self-care doesn't have to cost anything, because I also feel like people think it's like, oh, you have to pay to go to the spa, or you have to pay to like go on a vacation, or you have to do this. Whereas we mentioned the simplest thing you can do is ask yourself, how do I feel right now? You know?
Exactly. Yeah. And sometimes also, like, another thing I always like to say is sometimes self-care is doing nothing. Like, it truly is, like, sometimes doing nothing, saying no, resting, all of those things are often the best form of self-care you could give yourself. So it's really important to remember that too. Like, if you're someone that journals almost every day, and there's one day you're just really not compelled and you're not feeling it, like, do not force it. Like, that is okay. Like, you not doing something is honoring your needs just as much, if not more. So I always like to emphasize that too.
That's my biggest challenge. Is I don't know if you guys are into like Enneagrams or any of that, but I'm definitely the one that like always feels like if I'm not doing something, I'm not doing enough. So that is.
Are you the achiever? Are you
Yes,
free?
I am.
Yeah, so am I.
Yeah, so we all have our challenges, right? It's like that's something that I am definitely working on. So yeah, that's a great point too.
You'll get there, believe me.
Working on it.
And then Morgan, I just have one last question. How has journaling affected your life?
So I think that for me, I've always been someone that just like loves to write and just like let things out on the paper. And for me, journaling has given me a space to be honest with myself every day and release, and also set intentions and be intentional and focus on gratitude in the morning, and just overall set the tone for the day. And the other thing about journaling too is it's this like keepsake for yourself to have and look back on and celebrate your growth and reflect on your growth. And it's really cool to have this like almost like a diary, but kind of not, of yourself to celebrate along the way and celebrate the progress, even if it's, you know, small progress, and have that to look back at and remember where you've come from and remember what you've learned along the way. And I mean, I have my like full hardcover journal from last year where I literally journaled the day of my breakup. And then I got to look back at every day after and see how at the time it didn't feel like I was making progress and feeling better, but I really was. And I was able to celebrate those baby steps along the way. And that's just one example, but journaling really gives you that space to be honest with yourself. And because you're being so honest with yourself and truly writing down and sharing how you feel, then you are able to like look back and remember those feelings and be like, wow, I've come such a long way from just like a few months ago or 6 months ago or a year ago. And it's really, really special to have that for yourself as a tool. And yeah, so I absolutely love it. And I know that journaling practices look different for everyone, but I know that that's also something that can feel really intimidating at times. It's like, where do I begin? Like a blank page, like so many people, like, have this practice quote unquote down, but that's really why I wanted to create the journal that I did too, because it allows a space to check in with yourself, write down gratitude, set an intention, write down a mantra. There's like unique prompts on each page too, but it's really a place to set that tone. And I always say, if you're going to start somewhere, start with that checking with how you feel, setting those intentions and sharing that gratitude. And just like even starting with just those few things every day is a great place to begin and build that practice. And then just see how you feel doing it every day. See if it makes a difference for you.
Love it.
We always do what we like to call a little food for thought at the end, just a reflection. We also encourage something like journaling or whatever that reflection piece looks like for any of our listeners. So Sophie, do you want to tell everybody what our food for thought from this episode is?
Yes. So we'd like you to either discuss or journal, like Chelsea mentioned. What is your daily wellness routine? Do you have one? Would you like to create one? And is there anything you would like to add in, and the why behind it, as always?
Or take away. We should have added that in too, because as you had mentioned, it might be not doing anything or taking something away too. So I think we should add that in, as not only is there anything you'd like to add, but modify or take away. And do you have any other takeaways? You said so many great things, Morgan, but is there any last minute like takeaways that anybody should think about, or any last minute things you want to add in just in general about our conversation?
Yeah, I just want to remind people to like be gentle with themselves and practice self-compassion and self-acceptance. If you're on a self-care journey or on a wellness journey, every day is, a day to celebrate your progress. And you should just be so proud of yourself for showing up and doing what you're doing. And so much of self-love is really, the idea of embracing where you are at every single day and being proud of yourself. And it's okay that it's not going to be linear every day. It's okay to have days that you don't feel like your best self. And it's okay to allow those feelings to come up and to release them. And giving back to yourself is self-love, no matter what that looks like for you. So I always just like to share with people that it's a constant journey, and you just doing things for yourself is something to be really, really proud of. So yeah.
Well, thank you so much. This was amazing. Thanks for taking the time to hop on. And this is really helpful. I know it was helpful even for me. So I'm sure everyone else listening will have some big takeaways. So thanks so much for hopping on with us.
Thank you, Morgan.
Thank you so much. I had so much fun.
Have a good day, everybody.
Bye.